Women's Day. The small town of Everdale had always been bound by tradition, where the voices of women were often unheard. However, this Women's Day, a change was brewing. Sophia Carter, a young journalist, had returned home after years in the city, determined to awaken the town to the strength and contributions of its women. As she walked through the familiar cobbled streets, she saw the same patterns: women hurrying about, carrying burdens both seen and unseen. Sophia decided that this year's Women's Day celebration would be different. She would organize an event that would shake Everdale from its slumber, making every woman aware of her worth. With the support of her childhood friend Emma, a schoolteacher, Sophia set out to challenge the norms. They started gathering stories of women, stories of endurance, sacrifice, and quiet victories. The town's elders scoffed at the idea, dismissing their efforts as futile. But the younger generation, particularly the schoolgirls, were intrigued. Inspired by the tales of trailblazing women in history, they began to ask questions. Why were their mothers confined to household chores? Why did their grandmothers never dream beyond their kitchens? The event was not just about celebration, it was a revolution in the making. As word spread about Sophia's initiative, resistance emerged. The town's influential figures, mostly men, saw it as an unnecessary disturbance to the town's peace. They confronted Sophia, warning her that disrupting societal norms would bring dishonor. But Sophia, fueled by the fire of change, remained undeterred. "Honoring women does not dishonor men," she replied firmly. Emma, too, stood beside her, reminding everyone that women had always been the backbone of Everdale, working tirelessly behind the scenes. Despite the opposition, the movement gained momentum. Women began sharing their grievances, some whispering their struggles for the first time. A local widow, Margaret, spoke about how she was denied the right to inherit her husband's land. A young girl, Lily, revealed how she was forbidden from attending school while her brother's education was prioritized. These confessions stirred something deep within the community. The town's women were no longer just passive listeners. They were ready to take charge of their destinies. Sophia knew then that their Women's Day celebration was already achieving its purpose, breaking barriers and igniting courage. As the day of the event approached, the town's resistance grew fiercer. Several men publicly denounced Sophia and Emma's efforts, labeling them as rebellious troublemakers. Flyers announcing the Women's Day celebration were torn down overnight, and whispers of threats began circulating. But Sophia, unshaken, rallied the women to stand firm. "This is not just a celebration. This is a declaration of our worth," she told them. Encouraged by her unwavering resolve, more women stepped forward, willing to take part in the event despite the mounting pressure. One evening, Sophia and Emma received an anonymous letter, warning them to abandon their mission or face dire consequences. Emma's hands trembled as she read the note, but Sophia met her gaze with a reassuring smile. "Fear has kept us silent for too long," she said. "Now is the time to speak louder." Emma nodded, her fear replaced by determination. The women of Everdale were no longer willing to be silenced. They had a voice, and they were ready to use it. The Women's Day event finally arrived, and the town square filled with people, both supporters and skeptics. Sophia stood on the makeshift stage, her heart pounding as she took in the sight before her. Women of all ages stood together, their eyes filled with hope and defiance. The men, some curious and others disapproving, lingered at the edges of the crowd. Taking a deep breath, Sophia began her speech. "For too long, we have lived in the shadows, accepting less than we deserve. Today, we say no more." Her words sparked a wave of applause from the women, but murmurs of dissent rose from the men. Just as Sophia was about to continue, an elderly woman named Eleanor stepped forward. A revered midwife who had delivered half the town's children, she raised her voice for the first time in years. "I have served this community for decades," she said, "but when my husband died, I was cast aside, my opinions deemed worthless. No more." Her declaration was met with stunned silence, followed by a ripple of agreement from the women. Sophia knew that the tide was turning. Everdale would never be the same again. As the speeches continued, tensions flared. A group of men, led by a staunch traditionalist named Mr. Dawson, interrupted the event. "This gathering is a disgrace," he bellowed. "Women have always known their place, and that place is not here, stirring up rebellion." Gasps rippled through the crowd, but Sophia did not back down. "Our place is where we choose it to be," she replied. "We are not asking for permission to exist." The women cheered, their voices merging into a powerful chorus of agreement. However, the opposition was not deterred. Some men left in frustration, vowing to shut down the movement before it went too far. But others stayed, intrigued by the passion in their wives, daughters, and mothers. A young boy, barely 12, tugged on his father's sleeve. "Why shouldn't Lily go to school like me?" he asked. The father had no answer. Change was creeping into Everdale, one heart at a time. With momentum on their side, Sophia and Emma expanded their efforts. They worked with legal experts to challenge unjust laws and partnered with neighboring towns to strengthen their movement. Slowly, Everdale's women began to see real change. A new school was established for girls, and businesses started hiring women for roles beyond domestic work. Women were no longer just supporting the town, they were shaping its future. The opposition, though still present, had weakened. Some former critics even admitted that the changes benefited everyone. As Women's Day approached the following year, the town prepared for an even bigger celebration. This time, it was not just about awareness, it was about progress. Everdale had transformed, proving that a single voice, when joined by many, could change the world. Years later, Women's Day in Everdale became an annual tradition, a reminder of the power of unity and courage. Sophia, now a renowned journalist, looked back at the town she had once fought to change and smiled. The young girls who once questioned their roles were now leaders, teachers, and change makers. Eleanor's wisdom lived on in the next generation, and Margaret's victory in reclaiming her land set a precedent for women's rights across the region. Emma, now the headmistress of the town's first all-girls school, watched as young girls eagerly attended classes, dreaming of futures once deemed impossible. The battle for equality was far from over, but Everdale had taken its stand. And every Women's Day the town remembered. Change begins with courage, and courage begins with one voice willing to speak up,